Hi, I'm Anthony Originello, CEO of the Chartered Professionals in Human Resources for BC and Yukon. We represent more than 8,000 members, and as the organization dedicated to advancing the HR profession through education, advocacy, awareness, professional development, as well as our recognized and impactful CPHR designation, we are proud to be a sponsor of this show. We have been the voice of the HR profession since 1942. Learn more about us at cphrbc.ca.
On this episode of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Susannah Pierce. Susannah,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you, Stuart.
You've had quite a remarkable career. Your latest posting before moving into this next chapter of your life, where you were the country head and CEO of Shell Canada. A lot of people would go, okay, what does that job entail?
Yeah.
What does it look like? I get the title.
What does it really mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a great position if you are a very proud Canadian, which I am, and you basically sit amongst all of the businesses within Canada, and you act essentially as the president of that, and coordinating and looking at investment decisions, and really trying to make sure that that capital that Shell Group has comes to Canada. So working with your business heads, you look at what do we need to do, what do we need to create in order for Shell money to come to this country. And it's across everything at Shell, from what you are most familiar with, probably our retail gas stations, which also now, of course, have a power for electricity. You would also know us as some refining capacity that we have in Alberta. You'd know us for LNG, as was one of the larger shareholders in the LNG Canada project. You probably wouldn't know us, but we are known for carbon capture sequestration in the province of Alberta. And before I left, had made a decision on another phase for another project for CCS. And we also have, at the time, a growing renewables business. So Shell is still an integrated oil and gas company in Canada, but increasingly in other parts of the energy system. And my role as Shell Canada President Country Chair was to sit across all those businesses so that we would work together, drive effective business returns, but then also attract new capital from Shell.
So when you take a look at the entire mix of all of those different entities, how many people were working for the company in Canada?
In Canada, we were about 3,100 when I came in. Yeah, we did have a stake in the oil sands, which we then sold to CNRL, but when I came in, we were about 3,100.
3,100 people.
Yeah.
That gets filtered down through different levels of management and whatnot.
That's right.
Your team as CEO,
Yeah.
what did it include?
Well,
what divisions?
Yeah, and so within what we would call the Canada Country Chair Coordination Team, you would see folks from what we would call the downstream. So they would be responsible for the refining capacity, so taking oil and then refining it into the various different fuels that you would know, jet fuel, fuel for your cars, things like that, or chemicals. You would have our head of integrated gas, and that's really where we take the natural gas, we produce it, we sell it down as LNG. You'd have our head of mobility, which we would essentially be all those gas stations that you see, and on and on and on. And so you sit across this country coordination team and you coordinate business decisions. You also coordinate how do you reach out to communities? How do you manage the employee base collectively so that you are making sure that there's, the right sorts of employee value proposition to get the best of the best working for you. And you also play, I would say, a significant role in driving awareness and advocacy on energy issues. So what would make a successful company in Canada as it relates to our business? And what would it take to require or to attract more investment capital into Canada? And you work with your businesses in order to do that, both with Shell Group, but then also with governments.
So you've got a team then that you are, in essence, the captain of. You're kind of guiding the ship. You don't really get into the inner workings of each one of those departments, because I think it would be impossible for any one person to do that.
Yeah, you've got your heads of those individual businesses, which again are quite fantastic, all of them fantastic in their craft. And the nice thing working for a company like Shell as a multinational is people have worked all over the world. And that's really fantastic because you're gaining the experience of other jurisdictions and then coming to Canada. Many of them are Canadian, but they've worked all over the world and saying, okay, well, this is what's unique about Canada, but these are the experiences I had someplace else that I could bring to Canada to make the business even better and more robust. So you've got a team of very excellent, smart, and agile people who are working together to try and make Shell Canada the best of the best.
So that's kind of the inward side of the business, but there's an outward-facing component as well. What does that look like?
Well, that, for me at the time, and I think for Shell in general, is helping governments, communities, indigenous groups understand what our business is, and helping also receive from them what their interests are for our business. So we worked quite a bit with governments to say, okay, if these are your objectives, that you'd like to see more investment in this area, how might we be able to do that with you? Working with communities, these are what is interesting to you. How do we provide community benefits? Because if we're working in a community, we want to make sure the community is benefiting. With Indigenous communities as well, how are you becoming participants? How are you aware of our business so that you're comfortable with it, but you're also benefiting from it? And so a lot of the outward-facing work is working with communities, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and with governments. And part of that is also then generating the employee value proposition that I mentioned before. Nobody wants to work for a company that they don't feel is aligned with their values and who they think they are and their purpose. And so a lot of that is also making sure that what we do externally is also representing the interests of our employees, and our employees are proud to work at the company.
When you're in a position like that, do you ever actually turn off the switch and say, I'm not working right now? Or is it omnipresent?
Well, listen, I think, candidly, I think it's really important that all of us as leaders don't have a different persona necessarily in the office than you do at home. Now, you might have different stakeholders and you have your family, but who you are, your authenticity, I think, needs to shine through. Now, you might be dealing with different issues in the office than you would at home, but I think the important thing is that as a leader, people that work with you recognize you as a person first. Is that who you are is who you are, and that there's no inconsistencies there. That builds trust, and that they feel that they can have a meaningful relationship with you. Because I have found that when you have that relationship with your staff and other leaders, you do find that you build greater performance and you achieve outcomes more effectively than ever before. You become a team because you have trust. And, that's the same thing with families too, is we can also break trust with families when we fail to deliver, or we show up in a way that we didn't mean to. And that is also something. But, I think the most important thing for us as leaders is to demonstrate that we're no different, in this case or that case, that we are the same person. It's just that what we work on might be a little bit different.
So because young people will look at you and go, okay, wow, how do you get there? Let's go back to, where did you graduate from high school?
Graduated from Western High School in Calgary.
In Calgary. And as you're graduating from high school, did you go, yes, looking into the future, I want to be the head of a international energy company?
Absolutely not.
What were you thinking you were going to do?
Absolutely not. Yeah, well, growing up in Alberta, great place to grow up, but I really didn't want anything to do with the energy sector, to be candid. I guess I was that 17, 18-year-old that thought, no, I don't want to do it. My parents did. I want to get away from here. And so I actually ended up wanting to become a journalist. I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. At that time, I wanted to travel the world. I loved writing. I wanted to actually learn about different cultures and communities. So I actually went down, and I was fortunate to do this, to Washington, D.C., and I took an undergraduate degree in something called political communication, which was journalism, communications, and political science. And I worked on Capitol Hill, in the media department of a Republican congresswoman. And then I worked at NBC News, and I really studied the craft, believe it or not. But then after undergrad, I decided that there was more I wanted to understand, both from sort of finance and commerce and economic perspective. So I went and I got a graduate degree. And that changed me a little bit in terms of, do I want to pursue journalism? At that time in graduate school, I had been exposed to international development. I took a sabbatical down in Chile, Santiago. And I became actually, strangely, front and center of a debate between coal-fired power or natural gas-fired power, pipelines that would bring natural gas from Argentina across the Andes into Santiago, Chile, and community engagement. I was involved in some community engagement with an Indigenous community about building a pipeline in their backyard. Lo and behold, did I ever know that my future life would also be talking about some of the same stuff. But then I became back into a conversation around energy, in part because of this transition. Santiago at the time, this was mid-90s, was polluted with a lot of coal-fired power. But they were bringing in natural gas for the first time to clean up the air. And I wrote my graduate thesis, actually, on decarbonization of the Chilean country. And I became, again, back into this conversation around energy. It was around the same time as the Kyoto Accord, so I became more interested in the role of carbon policy. But then I took a bit of a detour, because when I graduated from grad school, I thought I'd go work for the World Bank or UN, but they weren't hiring me. So I ended up jumping into technology. This is .com stuff, and they were looking for anybody who could figure out something with technology, and they threw me in that, and I did that for a number of years. And then I ended up in New York City. To make a long story shorter, I was there during 9/11, and it was one of those moments I've shared in the past that when you have moments like that, you become much more aware of what really matters. And for me at the time, knowing some people that lost their lives and being a part of Lower Manhattan when the buildings went down, it was definitely a moment in time for me where I said, okay, am I doing what I want to do? Am I with the people that I love? And the answer to both questions was no. And so I came back to Canada and tried to get a job. Ended up getting a job with what is now TC Energy, because I worked as a summer student way back when. They hired me, worked for them for about 7 years, and then Shell hired me, and I carried on with them for a while.
So when you take a look at your career, and it's not a straight line.
No, definitely not.
What was it that you think that you possessed internally as a personality trait that said, yeah, I'm willing to go try this. I'm open to that. I'm going to put myself out there. Yeah. What have you discovered about yourself that you sort of went, I didn't know, but my, oh my, it was important to my success?
It's interesting that, I've thought a lot about this because none of my career decisions were necessarily well planned out in advance. Like I knew this is what I was going to do. But I do know that opportunities were presented to me. And when the opportunity was presented to me, I thought to myself, well, can I do this job? Maybe. Has anybody told me how to do it? Not really. But I think I can do it. And I've had the benefit of being given a chance to demonstrate that I could do a job, but not being so prescriptive by my boss to say, you have to do it this way. And I don't think I could work in an environment where somebody told me, you've got to get to this point, but this is what you need to do, a very prescriptive fashion. I've had the benefit of being given an opportunity and being told, that's where the goalposts are, go get them. And I've been able to innovate. I've been able to think differently. I've done a lot of engagement. One of the things that I guess I came with sort of natural talent, is to work with people, to understand their interests. And that's why I think part of my success has come from understanding people. Okay, how do we build shared interests? Okay, here's where we need to get to. How do we all work together? We want to push ourselves harder, but then there's benefits on the other. So I think part of it has always been presented with opportunities, being told I need to jump this high, and then being able to jump that high without having to worry about how I look when I do it. I've had that great fortune. And I also think, and I've said this, to my kids, is that, you need to think about when you're looking for your job or your career, whatever it is, what is it you're trying to do that has meaning? Okay, and what is it that you're trying to do that has meaning that you think you can throw yourself at? Because if we define ourselves by a job or a job title, that gets kind of boring and probably less fulfilling. But what you're doing on the ground that has meaning to people, that changes the type of job that you have. And I've always had, again, the luxury of being able to define in a certain way, how does this help people? How do I actually drive myself in a way where I can actually do something bigger and better than anyone ever has before? And I've never really had my wings clipped in a way. So that's been fantastic. But it has demonstrated that you need to hustle, you need to innovate, you need to fall down and get yourself back up. You need to not look over your shoulder too much, but you need to care about people along the way. And again, that's, I guess, led to some success.
Great insights. Thanks for sharing your career path.
Thank you.